Hello, welcome back to another episode of Sculpting at Home. You'll have noticed that up until this stage I've just been working from my front photo and then my two sides, my profile pictures. And in this episode I'm going to start looking at my 3/4 angles. So that's with him facing this way and this way. I'll be working from these two photos from the photo pack, pictures 6A and 6B. And these are, of course, part of the reference pack that you can go and purchase on the website sculptingmasterclass.com. I see a lot of people online working from just one photo from the front and just sculpting only looking at the front angle. That's just not a very good idea because you won't get those depths right. And it's the depths that give someone life and make it really pop as a sculpture. I want to talk a bit about symmetry because that affects if the angles are the same on either side. So if we look at Mark's face, this is the front on, you can see that he is pretty much got a symmetrical face. There's nothing jumping out that he's really different from one side to the other. There's a bit of a myth that beautiful people are always symmetrical, and that's just not true. If you look at a lot of Hollywood stars, they've got something that's different on different sides of their faces. I already talked about noses in the nose section. They'll often have a nose going off to one side, but you'll often find that people have a different shape eye on each side, or one eye is a little bit higher. Like, for instance, Paul Walker that I sculpted had one eye slightly higher. And then if you think of someone like Chadwick Boseman, he's got that lovely, warm, cheeky little smile that goes off to one side. And it's often these little idiosyncrasies that are not quite symmetrical that actually make someone even more beautiful. So let's have a look at Mark's face, because it's always a good idea to just have a look before you even start sculpting and just take a note of what it is that you're going to be looking at. So we can see his nose is pretty straight from both sides, and the shape of his forehead and his eye and his cheekbone, the way it comes down, it's pretty much the same on both sides. There's nothing jumping out that's really drastically different. People often have something about their face that isn't the same both sides, and it's something that often catches me out when I'm sculpting celebrities from photographs that I found online, is that graphic designers will often flip an image because it fits better with the text or something. And if you haven't noticed that someone's got, a mole on one side of their face and suddenly it's on the other side, then it can actually throw you and make your sculpt not quite make sense three-dimensionally. So, for instance, a couple of people that I've sculpted like that would be Tom Cruise, who's got a mole in the middle of his cheek, and Matt Damon has a mole on one side of his top lip. And if you know which side it is, because most of the pictures show you that, then you know when one's been flipped, and you can be aware that you might not be trusting that particular photo. And the same goes for face tattoos or neck tattoos. You'd be amazed how many pictures get published with tattoos in reverse. So I found that when I was sculpting people like Post Malone or Jelly Roll, when they've got tattoos on their faces or necks and suddenly they've jumped or they've got words that are backwards. So let's get back to Mark. I'm going to actually start sculpting now. So the first thing is I'm going to stand back and I'm going to gauge how far his head is turned. And I do that by looking at the shape of his nose, and that tells me what angle I'm actually looking at my sculpt from, especially in these early stages when some of this hasn't been filled out. I know that this is sort of more or less the right shape, so I can use that as a reference. And then I'm just going to look at the whole outside profile of his face. So the curve of his forehead as it comes in there, then it kicks out to his eye socket, cuts back in there, then the curve of his cheekbone, and then it really sucks in quite a lot there on he's got quite hollowed out cheeks, and then the curve of his mouth going down to his chin. Mark's great because you can really see the bone structure in there. When you're sculpting someone with a little bit more body fat, this actually gets a lot more challenging. People that I've sculpted in the past, people like Melissa McCarthy or Lizzo, they'll have, much more of a general curve around that shape, but it's great when you can really see the bone structure within the face. So I'm just standing back a little bit And I'm going to start off by just making that profile of the nose. I know that's where my hairline is, so I'm just going to add some of that fullness there. First of all. And then that corner of the eye socket sticking out there. Right, so I like to start from the top. Let's get that forehead filled out because it's not enough there at all. Coming down, filling out his forehead. Then I feel like his cheekbone needs a little bit more there. He's just got such a great face to sculpt, Mark. I've absolutely loved sculpting him first time. Now I'm sculpting him again. That's how much I've enjoyed it. And that's how much you could enjoy it if you just go on over to Sculpting Masterclass, get that reference pack and sculpt along with me. So I can see a bit more of his nasolabial fold there, so I'm just getting that on there. And then this looks like it wants to come out a bit more as well, that fullness. And then a curve around there. Oh, he's so angry. Sometimes it can make you pull the face that your sculpt is doing. That's what I find. I often find myself either really angrily frowning or massively smiling when I'm sculpting. Okay, so that's all right for that bit. And now I'm going to start looking at this side. So I've looked at this outer profile and now I want to look at this shape. So I know where his tragus is. So what's that shape of his jaw coming down? I'm just really looking for the structure underneath at this stage. Obviously he's a little bit older, so he's got a little bit of skin jowliness there, but I'm just looking for information and getting it on there. And then I might add a bit more to the back of his skull if I feel like it needs it as well. Thing is, in these early stages, you just want to not get distracted by any sort of worrying about any details or surface stuff. You're just looking for that underlying structure and those big forms. And if you err on the side of keeping it under, that's quite good because it just keeps you in control of everything. If you start whacking on loads of clay, then you're going to have to start carving off lots of clay, and then you can sort of very quickly fall into not really knowing what you trust of what you've done, and everything gets a little bit out of control. If that's his tragus that I've got marked on, I feel like he needs a bit more head under his hair there. So I'm just going to add that on as well. There we go. And then finally, I just want to look at that nasolabial fold that I drew on from the front. I want to look at how far forward it feels like it needs to come. because at the moment it's really far back, so I feel like that needs to come forwards a little bit. If that's my nostril, then I feel like that just needs a bit more on the front of the fleshy crease there. There we go. Nothing's set in stone, it's all just gathering your information and putting anything that you find on there. And that's it. From that angle, now I'm going to do the same on the other side. Start off with the nose a little bit again. The shape of the forehead. I'm just really looking for the bone structure at the moment. Obviously he's really frowning, so he will get a bit more of a frowny brow at some point, but at the moment just looking for that underlying skull structure. Just going to use a tool to put on a bit more fullness on that bit. It's often the furthest away side that you can see the volumes of all these areas better than when you're actually looking at it from the side that it is. It's one of those counterintuitive things that the thing on the other side is clearer than the thing your side. And then I'm just making good the things that I found when I was working on the other side. I'm just working on just blending it in a bit so that it's a bit less abstract. And joining it up with any other information I've found, so I know where that temporal ridge was from the side, so that clay I just added must blend into that. And this is looking a bit empty. I'll just fill that in a little bit. Great. Then I'll just have a look from the front and see if it's looking basically sort of symmetrical. Yeah, looks okay. Just make sure I've done everything the same on both sides, so. Just fill in some of those bits. I'm still thinking about the skull structure. There's that zygomatic arch. Make sure it's the same height both sides. Fill in the temples just a little bit. Hello, Fernando. Oh, yes, I do get asked this question quite a lot. Great, okay, thank you very much. Thanks for telling me. Bye. I've had a question, and this is something that I get asked quite a lot, and it's, can you use my sculpting technique if you're going to fire your heads? Well, honestly, my techniques that I teach in all my online courses and this series, they're really focused on just the sculpting. So it doesn't matter what kind of material you use. You might want to use a different kind of clay. You might want to mould it. You might not want to mould it. You might want to fire it. It's really the most important thing to focus on when you're learning to sculpt is understanding the anatomical structure underneath and just really practicing and training your eye to see more accurately. Now, the only difference is if you want to fire a head is that you will need to use a different armature than the one that I show you how to make, because my armatures are quite big because they've got the armature wire in and the clay really sticks to them. So then if you want to hollow it out afterwards or fire it, you can't. Because if you want to fire a head, it can't have any metal or wood or anything inside it. It needs to be either hollowed out, so you have to make a simple armature made out of just a simple post, which I'll show you in a minute, and then you will need to slice the back off with a cheese wire and hollow it out, stick it back together, and then you can fire it hollow. There is always a risk of getting air bubbles. That's why I don't really do this method. I always like to mould my work, so I know I'm going to get a copy of it in the end. And the other option is that you make a simple paper armature, which will burn out inside. So I'm going to show you both options, just so you know. So all I've got here is just a simple post attached to a baseboard with some brackets like I showed you before, and then I've just got a piece of plastic bag. So anything non-porous, you know, cling film or a plastic bag, just wrap it around tight. And the main thing is you just want it to be easy to slice out of your clay. So something like that, and then wrap a bit of sellotape round it, and then build up your clay from the base upwards so that you've got something strong within it. So if you are going to sculpt this method, because the armature isn't as stuck to your clay, you need to have it starting from the bottom. So you will need to pack that clay on round the bottom, and you will have to sculpt your bust right down to the board. You can't have just a head just floating on a post, or it'll just spin off and it won't stick to the post. So you will need to make a solid down to the ground bust. And then once you've finished sculpting, leave it to just go a little bit hard, and then you need to use a cheese wire to slice the back off, hollow it out, remove the whole armature, put it just on a board on its own, stick the back on, and then you can fire it. Now there's loads of videos that show you how to do this on YouTube, so you know, it's not my preferred method, so I'm not going to actually do that with my sculpt of Mark. Now another option that you can do is to make a paper armature which burns out once you put the head in the kiln. So here I've got a board that can go in the kiln, and then this is a kitchen roll inside, which I've stuffed with a bit of scrumpled up newspaper to make it a little bit stiffer, and then I've taped it on with masking tape. So that's my main post. So now I'm going to pad it out with a bit of scrumpled up newspaper and then a piece of newspaper and tape it on with some masking tape. Okay, so remember that your head is going to be bigger at the front than the back, like we talked about when I was making the other armatures in the first episode. And then, so you don't want it right on the top, you want it off to one side of it. And then something like that. So there you are. And then again, because it's such a wobbly, unstrong armature, this, you want to build it up from the base, so you'll have to have some kind of a full bust down to the board. And then I understand, I haven't done it myself, I have sculpted heads like this when I was working for another artist, but I haven't actually watched it be fired. But apparently once you put it in the kiln, this burns away and you just end up with a hollow ceramic head. Just so you know, the actual sculpting side of things is exactly the same. It doesn't make any difference whether you want to use oil clay or you want to fire your clay or whatever. You know, what I'm teaching you here is learning to sculpt better. So I'm going to leave it there for the 3/4 angles. I've fleshed it out and you can see it's really starting to build up in the round, and I'm just being very controlled about what pictures I'm allowing myself to look at, because if you start looking at too many angles you just get all overwhelmed. But everything's just gradually moving forwards in an orderly fashion, and I'm very happy with where it's at now. Here, you'll never guess what the next episode is. It's ears! I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and head on over to sculptingmasterclass.com if you want to download the pictures of Mark so you can sculpt along with me, or have a look at any of our other online video courses. And don't forget, if you've got any questions for me, just put them in the comments and Fernando will phone them through live to me so I can answer them in the next episode.